my son held my wife's last quilt in both hands like it was something he had found in a dumpster. "This old quilt is trash," he said, smiling at the guests in his brand-new glass house. "And trash does not belong in a home like this." Before I could move, before my 9-year-old granddaughter could cry out, he turned and threw it straight into the fireplace. The flames caught the corner first. Red cloth, white cloth, little blue squares from my old work shirts, all of it curling into smoke. My granddaughter, Ellie, whispered, "Grandpa, Grandma made that for me." I did not answer her right away. I walked across my son's polished stone floor, opened the fireplace screen, and pulled the quilt out with my bare hands. The room went quiet then, not because they cared, because an old man had just reached into fire without making a sound. What none of them knew was that the fire had not destroyed my wife's secret. It had revealed it. My name is Martin Hale. I am 73 years old, and for 31 years I worked as a postal inspector in western Pennsylvania. Not a mailman, a postal inspector. I investigated stolen checks, forged signatures, mail fraud, false claims, missing certified letters, and the kind of quiet crimes people commit when they think paper cannot talk. Paper talks. So do envelopes. So do dates, stamps, return addresses, and signatures made by hands that were shaking too hard. I spent my life following trails that other people ignored. Then I retired to a small brick house in Beaver Falls with my wife, Evelyn, and I thought the investigating part of my life was over. Evelyn had been a school librarian. She knew every child in town by name, knew who needed lunch money, who needed a winter coat, who was afraid to go home, and who was pretending to be brave. She could look at a child for 10 seconds and know what kind of pain they were carrying. She was soft, but not weak. There is a difference. Soft people can still build walls strong enough to protect everyone they love. The quilt my son burned was the last thing she made before her stroke. It was not fancy. It was not the kind of quilt that wins blue ribbons at county fairs. It had uneven corners and a faded backing. Some squares came from my old postal shirts. Some came from Evelyn's library dresses. One yellow square came from the curtains we hung in our son's nursery back when we still believed he would grow up kind. Evelyn called it Ellie's reading quilt. She made it for our granddaughter because Ellie loved to curl up with books in the corner of our living room. Evelyn said every child needed one place in the world where they could be warm and safe and left alone with a story. When Evelyn died, I folded that quilt and put it in the cedar chest. I waited because Evelyn's last words about it were strange. She was lying in the hospital bed in our front room, the left side of her face slack from the stroke, but her right hand still squeezing mine with that old stubborn strength. "Martin," she whispered, "do not give the quilt to Aaron until you know he deserves to stand near it." Aaron was our only son. At the time, I thought grief had confused her. I said, "It's for Ellie, Evie, not Aaron." Her eyes sharpened. "That's why I'm telling you." Then she pulled my hand closer and said, "If anything happens to me before I explain, take it to Rosa. Not a dry cleaner, not a tailor, Rosa. She will know what he chose." I asked her what she meant. She closed her eyes. "Promise me." I promised. She died 8 days later. For 6 months after that, I lived inside the quiet. My house still smelled like lemon polish and old books. Her glasses were still on the side table. Her handwriting was still on grocery lists, stuck to the refrigerator, with little fruit magnets. Sometimes I opened the hall closet just to see her blue coat hanging there, because for half a second my heart would forget and think she had only stepped outside. Aaron visited twice. Both times he checked his phone more than he looked at me. He was 46, a real estate developer in Pittsburgh, and he had become the kind of man who wore shoes softer than his conscience. He spoke in numbers, equity, leverage, cash flow, appreciation, opportunity. He called old neighborhoods underused assets. He called working people low-yield tenants. He called me dad only when he needed something. His wife Vanessa was worse in a quieter way. She had a smile that never reached her eyes, and a way of touching Ellie's shoulder that looked loving from across a room, but controlling up close. She dressed Ellie like a doll and corrected her in whispers. "Stand straight. Don't embarrass us. Don't talk about your grandmother in front of guests." Ellie was 9, thin as a rail, with Evelyn's serious eyes and my habit of watching doors. She loved books. She loved grilled cheese cut into triangles. She hated loud voices. She came to my house every other Saturday, and every time Aaron picked her up, she looked smaller than when she arrived. I noticed. Old inspectors notice everything, But noticing and proving are not the same thing. Aaron's new house sat on a ridge outside Sewickley, all black windows and white stone, with a driveway that curved like it belonged to a senator. He called it a housewarming party. It was really a performance. There were caterers, investors, city council people, bankers, a judge I recognized from the county courthouse, and 2 local reporters from a lifestyle magazine. Aaron had invited me because he wanted the picture of 3 generations standing under his chandelier: the humble father, the successful son, the pretty granddaughter, a family story polished enough for people with wine glasses. I brought the quilt in a brown paper package tied with string. Evelyn would have liked that. She never trusted gift bags. Ellie saw it before anyone else did. "Grandpa, is that what I think it is?" Her voice trembled. I knelt right there on Aaron's expensive floor. "It is," I said. "Your grandmother made it for you." Ellie reached for it with both hands. Vanessa stepped between us. "Not now, sweetheart. Your dress is white. It's not dirty," Ellie said. Vanessa's smile tightened. "I said not now." Aaron walked over, then, already annoyed. He had a glass in his hand. "Not wine. Whiskey." I knew the smell. "What is this?" he asked. "Your mother's quilt," I said. "For Ellie." His face changed. Not grief. Not tenderness. Irritation. "Dad, we talked about this." "No," I said. "You talked." I listened. A few guests turned their heads. Aaron lowered his voice, but not enough. Men like Aaron never lower their voices unless they are sure the room is still watching. "Mom is gone. Dragging her old things into every milestone is not healthy." Ellie whispered, "Daddy, Grandma made it for me." Aaron did not look at her. He looked at the quilt, then at the room, then at the huge fireplace built into the far wall, where a neat decorative fire burned behind black iron. He laughed once, like he wanted everyone to laugh with him. "This old quilt is trash," he said, "and trash does not belong in a home like this." I saw Ellie's mouth open. I saw Vanessa glance toward the reporters. I saw Aaron make his choice. He snatched the quilt from my hands and threw it into the fireplace. Ellie made a sound I will hear until I die. Not a scream, a breaking. I moved before I thought. Maybe that is what grief does when it finally finds a direction. I crossed the room, opened the screen, and pulled the quilt out. Fire bit my fingers. Sparks jumped against my sleeve. Someone gasped. Someone said my name. Aaron shouted, "Dad, are you insane?" I dropped the quilt on the stone hearth and pressed it with both hands until the small flames died. My palms burned. The quilt smoked. The room smelled like wool, ash, and old betrayal. Aaron grabbed my arm. "Look at yourself," he hissed. "This is exactly what I've been talking about. You are not safe alone." That sentence stayed with me. Not because it hurt, because it sounded prepared. I looked at my son, and for the first time in years, I stopped seeing the boy who used to fall asleep on my chest during baseball games. I saw a man building a case. Ellie slipped away from Vanessa and ran to me. "Grandpa, did Grandma do something wrong?" "No, sweetheart," I said, picking up the smoking quilt with my burned hands. "Your grandmother did everything right." Aaron's jaw clenched. "Leave it here," he said. "I'll have someone dispose of it." I looked at him. "No." "Dad." "No," I said again, softer. "You already had your turn with it." I carried the quilt out through a house full of silent people. Outside, the cold Pennsylvania air hit my face, and I realized I was shaking, not from pain, from the effort of not becoming the kind of man my son had become. Ellie stood at the tall front window as I got into my truck. She raised one small hand. Vanessa pulled her away. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with both hands wrapped in gauze, and the damaged quilt spread in front of me. The fire had burned one corner badly. The yellow nursery curtain square was scorched brown. Some of the old blue fabric from my postal shirts had blackened along the edges. The backing smelled like smoke. I stared at it for a long time. Then I noticed something. On the lower border, where the heat had darkened the cream-colored fabric, faint brown letters had appeared. Not ink exactly. More like a stain pulled out by fire. I leaned closer. The letters were uneven, written in Evelyn's hand. Rosa came knows the heat. My breath stopped. For 6 months, I had remembered Evelyn's words as grief. Now they were sitting in front of me, burned into cloth. I did not sleep that night. At 7 the next morning, I drove to an old brick building in Ambridge with a faded sign that read, Delgado Textile Conservation. Rosa Delgado was 80 years old, 4 feet 11, with silver hair pinned tight and eyes sharp enough to cut thread. She had restored church banners, military flags, antique wedding dresses, and quilts that had crossed oceans in steamer trunks. Evelyn had volunteered with her years earlier when the library hosted a local history exhibit. When I carried the quilt inside, Rosa did not ask what happened. She touched the scorched edge with 2 fingers and closed her eyes. Your son finally showed himself, she said. I sat down. You knew? I knew Evelyn was afraid of something, Rosa said. Not at first, but near the end, yes. She cleared a work table and spread the quilt flat under a large magnifying lamp. Her hands moved slowly, respectfully, like she was touching a person. This is not just a quilt, she said. I know that now. No, Rosa said. You do not. She brought out a small lamp with a blue-white bulb and turned off the overhead lights. Under the special light, the quilt changed. Lines appeared between the squares, tiny marks, numbers stitched in thread nearly the same color as the fabric. What looked like decoration was not decoration, it was a map, not of land, of mail routes, my mail routes. Routes I had inspected 20 years earlier during a pension fraud case involving stolen checks from elderly residents. My mouth went dry. Why would Evelyn stitch my old cases into a quilt? Rosa did not answer. She was looking at the scorched border. The heat brought out the first message, she said. There may be more. She mixed a mild solution and dabbed it carefully along the back of the quilt, where the fire had warmed the cloth but not burned through. Slowly, another line appeared. Haregrove Bank, Box 219. Ask for Len. I stood so fast the chair scraped the floor. Hargrove Bank was a small private bank downtown. Old money, old files. The kind of place that still used brass keys and knew which families wanted discretion. Did Evelyn leave anything with you? I asked. Rosa nodded. She opened a drawer and took out a sealed envelope. I was supposed to give this to you only after the quilt came back damaged by heat, she said. Those were her words, damaged by heat. I prayed I would never have to. The envelope had my name on it. Martin, in Evelyn's careful handwriting. My hands were clumsy opening it. Inside was one sheet of paper. My dearest Marty, if you are reading this, then Aaron has done something cruel enough to bring this quilt back to Rosa. I am sorry. I hoped I was wrong about our son. A mother keeps hoping long after the evidence tells her to stop. But hope is not a plan, and Ellie needs a plan. The quilt will lead you to the bank box. Do not go alone. Take a lawyer. Take someone who understands mail fraud. What Aaron did began with paper, and paper will end it. Protect Ellie first. Everything else comes after. I love you beyond this life. Evie. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it and put it in my shirt pocket close to my heart. Rosa watched me quietly. What did he do? I asked. She shook her head. I only know what Evelyn feared. She said certified letters were disappearing. She said your signature had appeared on something you never signed. She said Aaron had started using her illness as a door. My stomach turned. What door? Rosa looked toward the quilt. The kind people open when they think old people are too tired to check the locks. By 10 that morning, I was in the office of Mara Chen, an elder law attorney in Pittsburgh who had once helped a postal worker's widow recover stolen benefits. She was in her early 50s, direct, calm, and allergic to nonsense. I told her everything. The party, the quilt, the hidden message, Evelyn's letter, Hargrove Bank. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, Mr. Hale, before we go to that bank, I need to ask you something. Has your son recently suggested that you should move into assisted living? Yes. Has he asked about your accounts? Yes. Has your mail been delayed? I sat back. For weeks, certain envelopes had come late. Medicare statements, tax notices. One letter from my pension office that looked opened and resealed. I thought the post office was just slow, I said. Mara's eyes sharpened. Postal inspectors are the hardest people to steal from, unless the thief is family. That sentence landed hard because it was true. We went to Hargrove Bank with Mara, Rosa, and an old colleague of mine named Frank Bell, who had retired from the Postal Inspection Service 3 years after I did. Frank was 70, heavyset, slow-moving, and still had the calmest eyes of any investigator I ever knew. Lena Voss, the bank manager, was waiting for us. The moment she saw the quilt, her face tightened. Mrs. Hale told me this day might come. The safe deposit room was quiet and cold. Lena unlocked box 219 with the bank key. Then she handed me Evelyn's key. I did not know I had it until Rosa pointed to one of the quilt's corner squares. Sewn flat into the binding was a tiny brass key, hidden under a flap of cloth that was not a pocket, not a pouch, just a fold so ordinary I had missed it for years. Evelyn had hidden the key in plain sight. Inside the box were 3 thick envelopes, a flash drive, a small recorder, and a children's book. Charlotte's Web. Ellie's favorite. On the inside cover, Evelyn had written, "For Ellie, who must learn that small voices can still save lives." Mara opened the first envelope. Her expression changed before she spoke. "These are original trust documents." "What trust?" "The Hale Family Reading Trust," she said, "created by Evelyn Hale 5 years ago. Funded by 3 rental properties, a life insurance policy, and a private scholarship account. Purpose: educational support for Ellie Hale until age 25, with remaining funds to support literacy programs for children in Beaver County." I stared at her. "Rental properties?" Mara read further. 2 duplexes in Beaver Falls and 1 small commercial building in Rochester. Estimated combined value, about $1.8 million, not counting accounts. I sat down. Evelyn and I had lived modestly, carefully. We clipped coupons. We drove our cars until repair bills made no sense. She bought books at library sales and wrapped Christmas gifts in saved paper. "How?" I whispered. Lena answered softly. "Your wife inherited the properties from her aunt years ago. She kept them in a separate trust. The rent went into scholarships and maintenance. She came here every quarter with ledgers." I thought of Evelyn at the kitchen table, writing in her little green notebook. I had thought she was keeping library fundraiser records. She had been building a future. Mara opened the second envelope, then she stopped. "Mr. Hale," she said, "your son has been trying to take this." The documents showed a trust amendment filed 6 months before Evelyn died. It removed me as successor trustee and replaced me with Aaron. It also changed the purpose of the trust from education and literacy to general family asset management. At the bottom was my signature, only it was not my signature. It was close, very close, but the M was wrong. My M always had a sharp second peak. This one was rounded. 31 years as a postal inspector, and my own forged name looked back at me from a bank document. "That is not mine," I said. Frank leaned over. "No," he said, "it is not." Mara opened the third envelope. Inside were copies of certified mail receipts, returned envelopes, notary logs, and photographs. Evelyn had documented everything. A certified letter from Hargrove Bank notifying me of the attempted trustee change had been signed for by someone using my name. The signature was false. A notice from the county recorder about property transfer had been mailed to my house but never reached me. A pension verification form had been redirected to Aaron's office for 3 weeks before being sent back. There was a private mailbox rental agreement in Pittsburgh under the name M. Hale. I had never rented a private mailbox in my life. Frank's face had gone still. "This is mail fraud," he said. "Not family drama, not misunderstanding. Mail fraud." Mara plugged in the flash drive. The first file was a video. Evelyn appeared on screen sitting at our kitchen table, thinner than I remembered, her hair wrapped in a scarf, her hands folded. For a moment, I forgot to breathe. "Martin," she said on the recording, "if you are seeing this, it means I did not get enough time to fix what Aaron broke." I covered my mouth. Her voice was weak but clear. "I found out by accident. A letter from Hargrove Bank came to the library because the post office returned it as undeliverable. That made no sense. We had lived in the same house for 42 years. I asked questions. Then I found the private mailbox. Then I found the signatures." She paused, swallowing. "Our son is in debt. Worse than he admits. He borrowed against future projects. He used investors' money badly. He thinks the Reading Trust can save him. He does not see it as Ellie's future. He sees it as oxygen." Mara's eyes flicked toward me, but she did not stop the video. "I wanted to go to the police. But then Aaron started talking about your memory. He told Vanessa he could have you declared incompetent if you fought him. I heard him through the kitchen window when he thought I was sleeping. He said old men are easy to move once doctors use the right words. My hands went cold. Evelyn leaned closer to the camera. Marty, listen to me. He will use your grief against you. He will use your burned hands if he gets the chance. He will use your burned hands if he gets the chance. He will call love confusion. He will call loyalty obsession. Do not let him turn your heart into evidence against you. The video blurred because my eyes filled. Then Evelyn said the words that changed everything, and Ellie is not safe with them. Mara froze the video. Do you know what she means? I shook my head, though part of me already did. Mara pressed play. Evelyn looked down at something off camera. I found Ellie hiding in our pantry last spring. She said she did not want to go home because Daddy got angry when she read too slowly. She said Vanessa locked her books in the laundry room when guests came because books made her look strange. I thought it was cruelty. Then, I learned Aaron had applied to send Ellie to a residential behavioral academy in Utah. No, I said. My voice did not sound like mine. Evelyn continued. He told them Ellie was defiant, obsessive, socially delayed, and emotionally unstable. None of that is true. She is quiet. She is grieving. She is a child. But if he can label her troubled, he can move her away. And if he moves her away, he can control her trust without anyone watching. Mara stopped the video again. Mr. Hale, we need to act immediately. I looked at her. How soon was he planning to send her? Mara opened a folder on the flash drive. There was an email confirmation from Northridge Youth Academy, enrollment pending. Transport date, Friday morning, 6:30 a.m. It was Wednesday. For years, I had thought the worst pain in life was burying my wife. I was wrong. The worst pain is realizing a child you love has been asking for help in a language too quiet for adults to hear. Mara moved fast. By noon, she had filed emergency notices with probate court and family court. Frank contacted 2 active postal inspectors he trusted. Rosa took the quilt back to her studio because Evelyn had stitched more route markings into the border, and some appeared to correspond to mailbox locations and dates. I drove home alone for 1 hour because Mara told me to rest. I did not rest. I stood in Ellie's little corner of our living room, where her stack of books still sat beside Evelyn's old rocking chair. On top was Charlotte's Web, the copy we kept at our house. Ellie had left a bookmark in chapter 21. I opened it and found a drawing tucked inside. It showed a small girl in a red sweater standing between 2 houses. One house was big and black with square windows. The other was small and yellow with smoke coming from the chimney. Over the small house, Ellie had written, "Grandpa's house is where my stomach stops hurting." I sat down in Evelyn's chair and cried like I had been saving it for months. Then my phone rang. Aaron. I let it ring twice. Then I answered. His voice came smooth and low. Dad, we need to talk about what happened last night. Do we? You embarrassed yourself. You embarrassed me. Reaching into a fire in front of guests is not normal behavior. There it was again. Prepared. I saved your mother's quilt, I said. You endangered yourself over a rag. I looked at my bandaged hands. What do you want, Aaron? He sighed like a tired parent. I want you to be reasonable. Vanessa and I have discussed this. It may be time for a professional evaluation, not because we don't love you. Because we don't. We do. Who recommended that? A doctor I know. What kind of doctor? A geriatric psychiatrist. What is his name? Silence. Then Aaron said, this suspicious tone is exactly the problem. I almost smiled. Not because anything was funny. Because guilty men often object to questions before they know how much you know. I spent 31 years asking suspicious questions, I said. And maybe that job made you paranoid. His voice sharpened. You see crimes everywhere. You always have. Mom fed into it with her little secrets and old papers. But she is gone now, Dad. She's not here to keep you anchored. I closed my eyes. He had always been cruelest when he spoke softly. You do not get to use your mother against me. I am trying to help you. No, I said. You are trying to move me. A pause. Then the mask slipped. You live alone in a house that should have been sold years ago. You hoard Mom's things. You confuse Ellie with stories. You show up at my home with dirty blankets and act like poverty is holiness. I said nothing. He kept going. You know what your problem is? You never understood success. You delivered mail and chased envelopes. I built something real. You built a house, I said. Your mother built safety. He laughed once. If you mean that ridiculous trust, we can talk about that too. My heart kicked. So he knew I knew something. Not everything, but something. What trust? I asked. Don't play games with me, Dad. Mom made emotional decisions near the end. She was not thinking clearly. I am cleaning up her mistakes by forging my name. The silence that followed was worth more than any confession. Then Aaron said, very quietly, "Be careful." "No," I said. "I have been careful long enough." He hung up. I called Mara. She had recorded the call through the app she'd installed on my phone that morning, with my consent, legal in Pennsylvania as long as I was a party to the conversation. "Good," she said after listening. He confirmed knowledge of the trust and motive. Good does not feel like the right word. It rarely does. That evening, Vanessa came to my house. She arrived in a cream-colored SUV and walked up my porch steps like she was entering a place that might stain her shoes. I opened the door but did not invite her in. She held her purse with both hands. "Martin, I think this family needs to stop before everyone gets hurt. Ellie is already hurt." Her face tightened. "Ellie is answer Daddy. She is a child." "She is difficult," Vanessa said. "You see her for a weekend and think you understand. You do not know what it is like living with a child who corrects adults, hides in corners, reads at dinner, asks inappropriate questions, and cries over every little change." I looked at her for a long moment. Evelyn loved those things about her. Vanessa looked away. Evelyn spoiled her. No, Evelyn saw her. That landed. I saw it. Vanessa's eyes filled, but not with guilt, with frustration. "Aaron is under pressure," she said. "The house, the investors, the delays, he needs access to liquidity. That trust could save everything." "That trust is not his. It is family money. It is Ellie's education money and your mother-in-law's literacy fund." Vanessa's mouth hardened. "Literacy fund," she repeated. "Do you know how childish that sounds when people are losing millions?" There it was, the clean truth, ugly and plain. I stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind me. "What did Aaron promise you?" She blinked. "What? If he got control of the trust?" She looked down at her purse. "Security. For you, for all of us. For Ellie?" Vanessa did not answer. Then she said, "Northridge is a good place. She needs structure. She needs love. She needs to stop acting like grief makes her special." My hands curled despite the burns. I forced them open. "You should leave." Vanessa took one step closer. "If you fight Aaron, he will destroy you. He has doctors, lawyers, friends. You are an old man in a small house with burned hands and a dead wife's blanket." I looked at her, and I felt something settle inside me. For the first time since Evelyn died, I did not feel alone. Because Evelyn had known. She had seen this road before I reached it. "You are right about one thing," I said. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. "What? I am an old man." Then I opened the door. "But I am an old man who kept receipts." The next day brought the first official blow. Aaron filed an emergency petition claiming I was mentally unstable, financially confused, and dangerous around Ellie. He attached sworn statements from 2 of his business partners saying I had acted erratically at the housewarming party. He included a photograph of me pulling the quilt from the fire, my hands in flames, my face twisted with pain. The caption read, "Martin Hale demonstrating impaired judgment." Mara read it and said, "Predictable." I said, "Painful." Both can be true. Aaron also requested temporary control of the Hale Family Reading Trust until my competency could be evaluated. There it was, not hidden anymore. Frank came to my house with 2 active postal inspectors, one named Noreen Patel and the other Marcus Reed. They sat at my kitchen table, drank black coffee, and reviewed Evelyn's documents. Noreen was young, maybe 35, but she had the stillness of someone who missed nothing. She studied the private mailbox rental agreement. "This ID copy is bad," she said. "What do you mean? The driver's license scan is yours, but the issue date is from before your most recent renewal. Someone used an old copy." Frank looked at me. "Who would have had that, Aaron?" I said. He helped Evelyn with insurance paperwork after her stroke. Marcus examined the certified mail receipts. Same handwriting on 3 signatures. Yours, Evelyn's, and a bank clerk's initials. One person signed all of them. Noreen looked up. We can open a federal inquiry. Mara nodded. Do it. By Thursday afternoon, the evidence grew teeth. Hargrove Bank produced surveillance footage showing Aaron entering the safe deposit lobby 2 months earlier with a man who claimed to be me. The man wore a ball cap and kept his face down, but he was 20 years too young and walked with no limp. The notary who stamped the trustee amendment worked out of Aaron's development office. The geriatric psychiatrist Aaron planned to use had already drafted an evaluation before meeting me, and Northridge Youth Academy had received a $12,000 deposit from Vanessa. The transport form said Ellie was to be picked up from home before sunrise Friday by 2 private escorts. Reason for transport: emotional defiance and family safety concerns. I read that line until the words lost shape. Family safety concerns. They were making Ellie sound dangerous because she liked books, missed her grandmother, and knew how to feel. At 5 o'clock Thursday evening, Ellie called me from a number I did not recognize. Grandpa! Her voice was so small I stood up immediately. Where are you, sweetheart? In the pantry. My chest tightened. Why are you whispering? Mom said I'm going on a trip tomorrow. I closed my eyes. What kind of trip? She said it's a school where they help bad kids be normal. My hand gripped the phone. You are not bad, Ellie. A pause. She said I make Daddy's life harder. I could hear her breathing. Then she asked the question that broke me worse than the fire had. Grandpa, if Grandma was here, would she let them send me away? No, I said. She would stand in the doorway. I wish she was here. I looked at Evelyn's photo on the wall. She is, I said, in the ways that matter. I'm scared. I know. Can I bring my books? You will not need to go there. How do you know? Because your grandmother built a trail out of thread and fire, I thought. Because your father forgot that paper talks. Because old men are slow until someone touches a child. But I only said, because I promised. Someone knocked near Ellie. She gasped. The line went dead. Mara filed for emergency protective relief at 6:10 p.m. By 8:30, we had a hearing scheduled for Friday morning at the Beaver County Courthouse. The same morning, Ellie was supposed to be taken. The ticking clock sat on my chest all night. I did not sleep. At 3 in the morning, I went to Evelyn's grave. The cemetery was quiet, the grass silver under the moon. I stood there with my burned hands in my coat pockets and the cold moving through my bones. I do not know if I can do this, I said. The wind moved through the bare trees. I looked at her stone. Evelyn May Hale, beloved wife, teacher of small readers, keeper of gentle things. I missed too much, I whispered. You saw it before I did. I thought of Ellie in the pantry. I thought of Aaron laughing in his glass house. I thought of the quilt smoking on stone. Then I remembered something Evelyn used to say when children came into the library afraid to read out loud. You do not need a loud voice. You only need one true sentence. I stood there until I found mine. At 10 the next morning, I walked into courtroom 3 with Mara on one side and Frank on the other. Aaron sat at the petitioner's table in a navy suit, looking tired but polished. Vanessa sat behind him, pale and angry. Their attorney, Glenn Whitmore, had silver hair and the relaxed face of a man who billed by the hour whether truth showed up or not. Ellie was not there, thank God. The judge was Marjorie Klein, 60-something, small, sharp-eyed, and famous for not tolerating theater. Aaron's attorney began with concern. That is how people like him package greed, concern. Your Honor, he said, this case is about an elderly man whose grief has unfortunately affected his judgment. Mr. Hale's behavior at a recent family gathering was alarming. He reached into an active fireplace, causing injury to himself, over an old blanket. My client is simply trying to protect his father and his daughter from escalating instability. Old blanket. I felt Mara's hand touch my arm under the table. Stay still. So I did. Whitmore continued. We are asking for a temporary competency evaluation, suspension of Mr. Nobe, Hale's authority over family assets, and protection of minor child Ellie Hale from emotional manipulation. Judge Klein looked at Mara. Response? Mara stood. Your Honor, this is not a case about grief. It is a case about fraud. The petitioner forged documents, intercepted mail, attempted to seize a child's educational trust, and arranged for that child to be transported out of state at dawn under false behavioral claims. The courtroom changed temperature. Aaron leaned toward his attorney. Whitmore stood. These are outrageous accusations. Yes, Mara said. They are. And we brought receipts. Judge Klein's eyes moved to Mara's file boxes. I can see that. The first witness was Aaron. Whitmore led him gently. Aaron spoke about my grief, my loneliness, my attachment to Evelyn's belongings. He said I often forgot dates, repeated stories, became suspicious, and scared Ellie with talk about her dead grandmother. He said the housewarming incident proved I could no longer separate sentiment from safety. He looked sad when he said it. I almost admired the performance. Then Mara stood. Mr. Madwar, the performance. Then Mara stood. Hale, you testified that your father has become forgetful. Yes. You claimed he missed a family lunch on September 9th because he forgot. Yes. Mara placed a document on the screen. September 9th, your father was attending a scheduled physical therapy appointment. Here's the clinic record signed by the therapist. Did you know that? Aaron's jaw tightened. I may have confused the date. You also claimed he got lost driving to your house in October. He called me from a gas station confused. Mara showed another record. That gas station was closed for renovation that entire month. Here's the county permit and utility shutdown notice. Did you fabricate that event? No. Then explain it. Aaron looked at his attorney. Judge Klein said, answer the question. I must have remembered wrong. Mara nodded. You remember many things wrong when those memories help you take control of money, don't you? Objection. Sustained. Rephrase. Mara turned one page. Mr. Hale, did you file paperwork to remove your father as successor trustee of the Hale Family Reading Trust? Aaron hesitated. My mother wanted me involved. That was not my question. I assisted with documents. Did you sign your father's name? No. Mara displayed the forged signature beside my real one. Postal Handwriting Examiner preliminary report states the trustee amendment signature is inconsistent with Martin Hale's known writing and consistent with simulated forgery. Did you sign it? Aaron's face flushed. No. Did you rent private mailbox 441 under your father's name? No. Mara displayed the rental agreement. Then why was the recovery email on that mailbox your office manager's email? Aaron looked down. I don't know. Did you intercept certified mail from Hargrove Bank? No. Mara looked toward the back of the courtroom. Noreen Patel stood. Judge Klein allowed her testimony. Noreen explained the mail trail clearly. Certified letters sent to my home had been redirected. A private mailbox had been opened using an old copy of my license. Delivery signatures were forged. Bank notices regarding the trust never reached me. Paper talked. It talked in dates, ink, stamps, and lies. Then Mara played the bank surveillance footage. Aaron entering Hargrove Bank with the younger man pretending to be me. The judge leaned forward. Aaron's attorney whispered something. Aaron did not respond. Next came the notary log, then the psychiatrist's pre-written evaluation, then the Northridge paperwork. When the judge saw Ellie's transport time, her face hardened. Mr. Hale, she said to Aaron, were you planning to send your daughter out of state tomorrow morning? Aaron straightened. Northridge is a therapeutic school. Did your daughter's pediatrician recommend it? No, but did a licensed child psychologist evaluate her? She has behavioral issues at home. What behavioral issues? Aaron's mouth tightened. She is defiant. She refuses to engage normally. She reads obsessively. She lies about being afraid. I closed my eyes. Mara spoke softly. Your Honor, we have school records. Ellie's teacher had written a statement. Ellie Hale is quiet, intelligent, kind, and academically strong. She shows anxiety around parental disappointment and becomes visibly distressed when discussing home discipline. She has never displayed aggression or defiance at school. The school librarian wrote one too. Ellie spends lunch in the library twice a week. She reads to younger students. She becomes tearful when asked about her grandmother but is comforted by books and routine. Then Mara played a short audio clip from Evelyn's flash drive. Evelyn's voice filled the courtroom. She is not difficult. She is tender. Do not punish tenderness because it makes greedy people uncomfortable. Nobody moved. Even Judge Klein looked down for a moment. Aaron's face twisted. My mother was ill when she recorded that. Mara turned to him. Your mother was clear enough to uncover your fraud. That was when Vanessa broke. She was always interfering. Vanessa snapped from behind Aaron, always making Ellie softer, always telling her she was perfect just because she was odd. The judge looked at her. Mrs. Hale, you will remain quiet unless called. But Vanessa had opened a door. Mara called her. Under oath, Vanessa tried to recover her polished voice, but fear makes people sloppy. She admitted the Northridge deposit. She admitted she had locked Ellie's books away during parties because it made her seem strange. She admitted Aaron needed money to cover investor penalties. She admitted they had discussed using the Redding Trust as collateral. Then Mara asked what was to happen to Ellie after Northridge. Vanessa blinked. What do you mean? Was she expected to return home? Vanessa looked at Aaron. Eventually. When? I don't know. 6 months? A year? It depended on progress. What progress? Vanessa's lips trembled with anger. Learning not to make everything so dramatic. Mara was quiet for a moment. Then she said, a child missing her dead grandmother is not drama. No one spoke. Finally, I was called. I walked to the witness stand slowly. My hands were still bandaged. Aaron watched me with something like hatred, but under it I saw fear. Mara asked me about Evelyn, about the quilt, about the party, about Ellie's call from the pantry. I answered as simply as I could. Then Whitmore rose to cross-examine me. Mr. Hale, you admit you reached into a burning fireplace. Yes. Would you call that safe behavior? No. Would you call that what? Rational? I looked at the judge, then at Aaron. I would call it a grandfather saving the last thing his wife made for a frightened child. Whitmore paused. But you injured yourself. I did. Over an object. No, I said. Over a promise. He frowned. Mr. Hale, do you believe your deceased wife is guiding your actions? Mara stood. Objection. Judge Klein looked at me, then said, I will allow limited answer. Whitmore smiled slightly. He thought he had me. I leaned toward the microphone. My wife left documents, recordings, bank instructions, and warnings. I am not following a ghost, sir. I am following evidence. Frank smiled for the first time all day. Whitmore had no further questions. Judge Klein took 20 minutes to review the filings. Those 20 minutes felt longer than the year after Evelyn died. Aaron sat frozen. Vanessa cried silently, but I could not tell for whom. When the judge returned, she did not waste words. The petition to suspend Martin Hale's authority is denied. The evidence presented suggests the petition itself was filed in bad faith as part of an attempt to gain control over trust assets. Aaron closed his eyes. Judge Klein continued. I am ordering an immediate freeze on all Hale Family Reading Trust assets pending full forensic accounting. I am referring the alleged mail fraud, forgery, and financial exploitation to appropriate state and federal authorities. She turned a page. As to the minor child, Ellie Hale, I find credible evidence that the parents arranged out-of-state transport under questionable and possibly false behavioral claims without appropriate medical basis. Pending a full custody review, temporary physical custody is granted to Martin Hale, with supervised visitation for both parents. The gavel came down. I did not feel victorious. I felt tired. But beneath the tired was something stronger. Ellie was not going to Northridge. That was enough. 2 hours later, a child services worker brought Ellie to my house. She came in wearing a pink coat, carrying her backpack, Charlotte's Web, and a plastic bag with 3 pairs of socks. That was all Vanessa had packed. When Ellie saw me, she stopped in the doorway. Am I allowed to stay? I knelt carefully because my knees are not what they used to be. For as long as you need. She looked past me into the living room. Where is Grandma's quilt? At Rosa's, I said. She is fixing it. Can burned things be fixed? I thought about Aaron. I thought about Evelyn. I thought about myself. Some can, I said. Some can't. But they can still matter. Ellie stepped forward and wrapped her arms around my neck. She did not cry. She just held on like a child who had finally reached land. The next months were not easy. Stories like this often make justice sound like a door opening and sunlight pouring in. Real justice is paperwork. It is interviews, court dates, bank freezes, counseling appointments, hard mornings, and children waking up from nightmares they do not know how to explain. Aaron was charged with forgery, attempted financial exploitation of an elderly person, and conspiracy connected to the mail fraud investigation. The federal case moved slowly, the way federal cases do, but it moved. His investors sued him. His house went on the market. The lifestyle magazine never published the housewarming photos. Vanessa moved in with her sister and attended supervised visits twice a month. Sometimes Ellie wanted to go. Sometimes she did not. I never forced her to feel more than she felt. The Reading Trust was restored to its original purpose. The rental property stayed protected. Mara arranged for a professional trustee to handle the financial side alongside me. Because I was old enough to know love and spreadsheets are not the same skill. Rosa repaired the quilt over 9 careful weeks. She did not hide the burns. I can cover them, she told me, but I do not think Evelyn would want that. She was right. The scorched corner remained, stabilized with fine stitching. Around the burn, Rosa embroidered a small border in dark blue thread, not to decorate the damage, to honor survival. When we brought the quilt home, Ellie touched the burned corner first. "It looks like a night sky," she said. I looked closer. She was right. The blackened fabric, the tiny pale stitches, the dark blue border. A night sky. Ellie spread the quilt on the living room floor and sat in the middle of it with Charlotte's Web open in her lap. For the first time in months, her shoulders dropped. That evening, she asked if we could make grilled cheese. "Triangles?" I asked. "Always triangles," she said. We ate at the kitchen table where Evelyn had recorded her warning. Ellie read aloud while I burned one sandwich and saved the other. She laughed, a real laugh, small, surprised, like it had escaped before fear could stop it. That laugh was worth more than every property in the trust. Spring came slowly to Beaver Falls. The maple tree outside my kitchen window grew little red buds. Ellie started counseling with a woman who used books and drawings to help children say things that were too heavy for plain words. Her teacher called to say Ellie had joined the reading circle again. One afternoon, I found her in the living room writing in a notebook. "What are you working on?" I asked. "A story." "What kind?" She looked at the quilt. "A girl whose grandmother leaves clues because grown-ups are being stupid." I smiled. "Sounds realistic." She nodded seriously. She nodded seriously. She nodded seriously. "The girl saves herself too, not just the grown-ups." I sat down across from her. "That is important." She tapped her pencil. "Grandpa, yes? Do you think Daddy loved me wrong, or did he not love me?" That question had no easy answer. Children deserve truth, but not truth sharpened into a knife. I took my time. "I think your father loved what he wanted you to be more than he understood who you are." She thought about that. "Is that still love?" "It is a broken kind." "Can broken love be fixed?" "Only if the person holding it stops pretending it isn't broken." She nodded, then wrote something down. Months later, Aaron wrote me from county jail. His letter was neat, controlled, familiar. "Dad, I have been told to take responsibility. I am trying to understand what that means. I blamed you for making me feel small. I blamed Mom for loving simple things. I blamed Ellie for not being the daughter I imagined. The truth is, I was ashamed of needing money after acting rich for so long. I saw the trust as rescue and told myself I deserved it because I was family. I do not know how to undo what I did. Tell Ellie I am sorry if you think she should hear it. Aaron, I read it twice, then I put it in a drawer. Not every apology needs an immediate audience. Ellie was healing. That came first. One Saturday, Rosa hosted a small exhibit at the local history center about message quilts, family textiles, and hidden records. She asked if she could display Evelyn's quilt for one afternoon under glass with our permission, no names attached. Ellie said yes. We stood together while people leaned over the quilt and read the little card beside it. A family quilt that survived fire and helped reveal financial exploitation, forgery, and the protection plan of a grandmother who refused to leave a child unguarded. An elderly woman in a red coat wiped her eyes. A young father picked up his daughter and said, "See that? Grandma, things matter." Ellie slipped her hand into mine. "Grandma would like this," she said. "Yes," I said, "but she would pretend she did not want attention." Ellie smiled. "She would say, 'Go look at the books instead.'" I laughed, and for once the laugh did not hurt. That night, after the exhibit, we brought the quilt home and put it back where it belonged, over the old reading chair in the living room, not locked away. Not treated like evidence anymore. A quilt should not spend its life in a box. Neither should a child. Before bed, Ellie stood in the doorway of her room and asked, "Grandpa, when people say something is trash, does that mean it is?" "No." "Then what does it mean?" I looked at the quilt, at the burned corner that had become a night sky, at the stitches Evelyn placed when her hands still worked, at the hidden trail she left because love had made her brave. It usually means they do not know how to value it. Ellie thought about that. Daddy didn't know how to value Grandma. "No," I said. "He didn't, or me." My throat tightened. "No, sweetheart, not the way you deserved. She looked down at her socks. But you do? I walked over and knelt in front of her. Every page reading, grilled cheese, question asking, quiet thinking part of you. She hugged me. Then she went to bed under a different blanket because the quilt was too fragile for sleeping now. But every night, before lights out, she touched the burned corner hanging over the chair, like saying goodnight to Evelyn. Like saying goodnight to the truth. A year after the housewarming, the big glass house was sold to a dentist from Ohio. Aaron took a plea deal. Vanessa agreed to extended supervised visitation and mandatory counseling. She cried in the final custody hearing and said she had been afraid of losing everything. Judge Klein said, "You lost sight of the child while counting the furniture." That line stayed with me. I was granted permanent guardianship. Ellie chose to keep seeing her mother once a month because children's hearts are complicated and often kinder than adults deserve. She was not ready to see Aaron. I told her that was allowed. The Redding Trust funded a children's room renovation at the Beaver Falls Library. They named it the Evelyn Hale Redding Room. There are yellow chairs, low shelves, and a corner with soft blankets where children can read without being bothered. On opening day, Ellie cut the ribbon. Her hands shook, but she did it. Then she read the first page of Charlotte's Web to a group of younger children sitting cross-legged on the rug. Her voice was quiet at first, then stronger. I stood in the back near the door because old habits die slowly and watched my granddaughter become a little more herself. Afterwards, she ran to me. "Did Grandma hear?" "I think," I said. "She had the best seat in the room." That evening, we went home to the small brick house. The one Aaron said should have been sold years ago. The one with squeaky floors, a stubborn back door, a kitchen drawer that sticks in summer, and more love in its walls than any mansion he ever built. Ellie made tomato soup while I made grilled cheese. We burned one sandwich. We ate it anyway. Later, she fell asleep on the couch with a book open on her chest. I covered her with a soft blue blanket from the hall closet, then sat in Evelyn's chair beside the repaired quilt. The burned corner caught the lamplight. I could still hear Aaron's voice. "This old quilt is trash." I thought about how wrong a person can be when money has eaten the tender parts of them. That quilt was never trash. It was a warning. It was a map. It was a grandmother's last act of protection. It was proof that quiet love can outthink loud greed. And it taught me something I should have known all along. The things people throw away often tell you who they really are. My son threw away his mother's quilt because he saw no value in old cloth, old promises, old people, or quiet children. But Evelyn had stitched value where he would never think to look. She hid truth in patience. She hid courage in thread. She hid away home for a little girl who had been told she was too much, too strange, too sensitive, too hard to love. Now that little girl reads in a yellow library room named for her grandmother. She laughs at burned sandwiches. She asks hard questions. She sleeps without fear most nights. And every morning, before school, she touches the quilt's dark corner and says, "Bye, Grandma. I am 73 years old. My hands still ache when it rains." My son is not the man I hoped he would become. My wife is still gone, but Ellie is safe. The trust is protected. The library is full of children. And Evelyn's quilt, scarred but standing, hangs in our living room where the morning sun reaches it first. So if you are listening to this, remember something from an old postal inspector who learned the hardest case of his life began inside his own family. Do not ignore missing letters. Do not ignore a child who gets quiet when adults enter the room. Do not let polished people convince you that cruelty is concern. And never believe that handmade things are worthless just because rich people cannot price them. Some love arrives in gold. Some arrives in property. Some arrives in court orders and bank records. But the strongest love I ever saw arrived in a faded quilt, burned at the edges, carrying a dead woman's warning through fire. My son called it trash. My granddaughter calls it Grandma's night sky. And me? I call it the reason we still have a family worth saving. If this story touched your heart, I want to ask you something. If you were in Martin's place and your own son threw your wife's last gift into the fire, would you stay calm? Or would your heart break right there in front of everyone? And if a little girl like Ellie looked at you and asked, "Am I allowed to stay?" would you open your door for her, even if the whole family stood against you? Tell me honestly in the comments. Do you think Martin did the right thing by protecting Ellie and exposing Aaron's lies? Or do you believe a parent should still be forgiven, no matter how badly they betray their family. I would really love to read your thoughts. And also, let me know where you are watching from today. Your city, your state, your country. I read your comments, and it means a lot to know where this story reached you. If this story reminded you of someone who protected you, loved you, or stood by you when nobody else did, please write their name in the comments too. Let their love be remembered. And if you enjoy emotional family stories like this, stories about betrayal, hidden truth, quiet justice, grandparents, children, and the kind of love money can never buy, then please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories like this. Thank you for watching until the end. Take care of your family, protect the quiet ones, and never forget, sometimes the thing people call trash is the very thing that saves a life.